Hello, and welcome to the next installment of the Liberating Webinars series. My name is Lydia XZ Brown, pronouns they, them, sign name and I am AWN's Director of Policy, Advocacy, and External Affairs. I am very excited for this evening's event, for which we are in partnership with Beyond the Rainbow and the Curve Foundation. A couple quick notes on access, because I've seen some comments in our chat. We have closed captioning available, but you will need to click the CC button at the bottom of your screen in order to turn it on. You will click CC and then show subtitle. You are also able to access the captions in a separate browser window if you prefer by clicking the link available in the chat. We have interpreters present on screen. If at any time you are having an issue with language or communication access, please share a message in the chat to either one of our staff, Ellis and Nancy, or to the public chat, and we will do our best to address the issue as quickly as possible, because language and communication justice are core to our work in disability justice. We also welcome you to participate in conversation and ask questions throughout the evening in our chat. I'm going to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Andrea Pino Silva, to speak a little bit about Beyond the Rainbow and our partnership.
Hello, my name is Andrea Pino Silva, pronouns she, her, and I am the producer of Beyond the Rainbow, a project of the Curve Foundation. I am a light-skinned Latina woman wearing a black shirt in front of a rainbow background with the logo Beyond the Rainbow. Beyond the Rainbow is a project of the Curve Foundation, which just celebrated its first year and was founded by the founder of Curve magazine, Franco Stevens, after the final chapter of the film Ahead of the Curve. The film follows the story of Franco Stevens and her journey to create the best-selling lesbian magazine. I am one of the featured cast members of the film, and one of the conversations that we talked about early on were the limits of representation, specifically in queer women's spaces, and how we could have intentional conversations about what is queer womanhood, who has kinship and who feels welcome in queer women's spaces, and how we can have intentional conversations about how diverse our spaces are and how we can have those difficult conversations to make sure that everyone feels welcome. I'm honored to be in partnership with AWN to have a very critical component of this series, which is disability justice and making sure that we center disabled voices and leadership. Franco Stevens, who is herself a disabled queer woman, is sad that she can't be here, but is honored to be able to be in partnership with AWN. So I am, once again, very thankful to be in conversation and humbled to be in this space to bring an integral part of the Beyond the Rainbow conversation, which is making sure that we center disabled voices and disabled imaginations that would make our greater queer movement much more closer to liberation. And I am honored to bring it back to Lydia.
This is Lydia, who was muted 2+ years into constantly using Zoom, and that still happens to me. I'm a youngish East Asian person with short black and teal hair, wearing glasses, a jade pendant, green shirt, and dark jacket. Behind me is a fake background using a picture that I took several years ago of a gorgeous glass building at dusk, graced in front by bare trees draped softly and lovingly with glowing lights. I'm very sad that Franco is not actually here with us, because Franco was actually originally planning to participate in our panel discussion and would have been our only woman participating. But I am thrilled to introduce friends and colleagues participating in this conversation today. First, I want to introduce Jamila Hamami. Jamila is a Texan ruckus maker and border and prison industrial complex abolitionist. For nearly 20 years, they have been a grassroots cross-movement organizer, receiving national and international recognition for their work. A Sundance Creative Change and Communications Institute alum, Jamila holds an affection for educating the masses and utilizes direct action, writing, art, research, creative intervention strategies, and solidarity as resistance. Jamila is an action-oriented strategist and researcher for social change consultant, and an educator of Arab and Muslim ethnicities and diasporas at San Francisco State University, and community organizing and community justice. They are a steering committee member of the annual Open Borders Conference and the vice president of the board of directors of Free Migration Project. Next, I would like to introduce Bridget Liang, who is a mixed race, queer, trans feminine, neurodivergent, disabled, fat, fangirl. They came into their queerness in Hamilton, Ontario. They're a PhD candidate in the Gender, Feminist, and Women's Studies program at York University, a community researcher, workshop and group facilitator, performance artist, and fiction writer. Their work is on autistic trans folks and their experiences with family. Welcome. I am so glad to have both of you in conversation. I consider you both my friends as well as my comrades, and I'm really excited for the conversation that we are about to have. First, as you know, this month, July, is Disability Pride Month. Can you both talk about how you celebrate disability pride or relate to disability pride as multiply marginalized disabled people? And Bridget, I'll turn to you first to answer this question. We have a lot of neurodivergence here.
Of course. And so it would be probably useful for you to call on us so we don't, all try to answer at the same time. Anyways, I'm not going to get into those particular feelings. My way of celebrating Disability Pride Month is to do my best to take care of myself, because I try my very best to live by the saying of the best revenge is to live a long and happy life. And so I try to do my, because the most radical thing we can do is to stay alive and show that we're not going anywhere. And so by taking care of myself, I am putting my all these identities and experiences first, and hopefully being able to break some barriers over the next few years, as I hopefully have a career? Question mark.
Thanks for sharing that, Bridget. Jamila?
Hi, I'm Jamila Hamami. I'm wearing a black button-down top with two buttons, one that says Free Mumia, and the other one that has Subcomandante Marcos, and it has EZLN. I'm wearing a gray scally cap, brown frame glasses, black frame glasses. I'm a light-skinned, mixed-race Arab, non-binary queer person with blue and brownish pigtails. I apologize, I'm trying to go through all of it. And behind me are lots of revolutionaries, including Farida Kahlo, Angela Davis, Jamila Bokhrid, Leila Khaled. I can keep going. Justice for Palestine back there. All right. So, for me, it's actually quite similar. I want to echo what Bridget said. This is actually my first disability pride to celebrate, believe it or not. I'm a late diagnosis of everything. Hashtag thanks gender. So for me, I'm learning every day, specifically. So I was diagnosed with I'm ADHD. I'm ADHD. Sorry, I'm stumbling through this a bit. This is my first DJ talk. Can you tell? So I'm learning every day to slow down. And that's something that I was never able to do before. I had to do all the things for all the people, and I was constantly masking, and I didn't realize how much so, to a point that I made myself just totally sick. Sorry, Lydia is harassing me in the chat. Um, that's a big part of my practice. I also was later in life diagnosed with fibromyalgia, among other things that are coming up now, thanks COVID. So I'm in this process of one, acceptance. That's how I'm celebrating Disability Pride Month for me. Setting hard boundaries with people, so that I can do exactly as Bridget was discussing. Be here for the long haul. Because why the fuck aren't we here for the long haul like everybody else? And, being really out and about. Not just about being queer, as I was before, being non-binary or trans-identifying, but out and about being neurodivergent, and disabled and living with chronic illness and being proud of it. For me, that's maybe for some, that's something that folks have been doing for a long time, but I'm now, it's all sort of coalescing in this moment of this year, and I think of these last few years of all of us in isolation, in varying ways. So that is how I am celebrating this month. Acceptance, self-love, love for other folks that are also in the DJ community, becoming an aspiring DJ, because it's a bit new to me, and just feeling fortunate to be in spaces like this. And again, thank you so much for the invitation to this event, to all of the hosts as well. Thank you.
This is Lydia. Thank you for sharing that, Jamila. And let me be hopefully one of many to tell you, welcome home. You are a beloved and cherished part of our community, and I hope you know that. My next question, which builds a little bit on what you were talking just a little bit about, is how disability actually intersects with your experiences of your gender and queerness. And Bridget, I'll go back to you because Jamila was just talking.
That's fine. I've been trying to think of how to answer this question, and it, for me, it just lumps all together. It's hard to, and is impossible to disentangle these experiences. Like during the times when I was younger and was on our version of welfare, um, I wasn't sure if the reason why I did not get that job was due to my last name, if it was due to my transness or my disability or size or all of the above. Because when I was on uh, Ontario Works, which is our version of welfare, um, I had a master's degree and was not able to break into um, the employment realm very easily. And during that time in my life, I was making $10,000 a year Canadian, um, plus whatever I could make under the table through gigs like this.
Jamila?
Um, so, similarly, excuse me, I'm realizing every day how much neurodivergence plays a, a massive role in just how I see the world and disability as a whole. And also, I feel like my gender, my queerness, my neurodivergence, my disability, all of it are just, they're all sort of locked in together as one. I just didn't know it for a long time. For a really, can I curse on this? For a really fucking long time. Until I was like 33. I am now 35. So.
This is Lydia. We curse all the fucking time. My
Right.
ring says fuck on it in cursive. Fancy, dainty cursive.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Lydia. I feel a little bit more comfortable now. Thank you. If I don't curse, I don't know who I am. It's kind of like the queerness and everything. They all intersect and interlock. I think that also feeds into my organizing, and I've realized more and more as I've learned about ADHD and neurodivergence, why I've always been so drawn to social justice work and why I've been so drawn to movement work and these sorts of things. And so when I think about my disability, my disabilities as a multi-disabled person, and my gender and queerness, I feel like they're all somewhat one and the same. Maybe that's not for everybody, but for me, I feel like that is the case. And it's something that I've grown to love about myself in a way that I don't think that I really understood until probably this past year, really deeply interrogating myself and my sense of self and all these pieces of me. I hope I answered that all right. That's sort of a roundabout way, yeah. But I think the other things that, come up for me is, I do see how my disability, my gender, and my queerness and their intersections have been a part of the trajectory of my life. In terms of even what Bridget was speaking about, like work, employment, these sorts of things, sort of acceptability politics and all of that jazz. And then also, I feel like the importance of rejecting all of those things around acceptability politics and respectability politics, because that's something that I realized I was doing through masking for so long. And for me, their intersections are something that I'm proud of and something that I've worked hard to really sorry, I'm trying to speak slowly. Really break down the barriers that um, I've built for myself unintentionally by living in an ableist world. So, and that also goes for, uh, honestly, an ableist world for a hetero, like, we live in homonormativity, even, heteronormativity, all of these different nuances that come together. And my desire to really break down those barriers so that we don't feel as if we have to engage in such respectability politics to be a part of broader systems and spaces, because we don't. We don't. So, thank you.
This is Lydia. A lot of us actually, share that, right? Like, in many of us have spoken about this in autistic and neurodivergent community spaces, that our senses of our gender, our queerness, and our neurodivergence are really deeply intertwined, right? And for me, this is also part of my own intersected reality, right? Where in so many spaces that I move through, people with much more proximity to privilege always want us to choose one, right? Like, people will say, you can't be that many things. How are you all those things, right? Like, you're in a lot of people of color spaces. Well, we don't want to talk about queerness. We don't want to talk about disability. In a lot of queer spaces, it's so white dominant. So many white trans non-binary people are the face of white non-binary folks, right? In so many disability spaces, it's the white cisgender folks who occupy the most space and take up the most room, so that our existence is treated as an aberration, even though we're global majorities. There are more queer and trans people of color in the world than white queer and trans people. There are more queer women of color in the world than there are white women. There are more disabled people of color in the world than there are white disabled people. Like, there are more of us, right, globally, than we are told are allowed to be acknowledged in white dominant global north spaces. And I do know that when we speak about our organizing work and our backgrounds, we are often operating in multiple spaces that don't contemplate our existence, that try to deny our existence, or that use that connectedness among our experiences as a way to try to delegitimize who we are. My next question for both of you, because I know that both of you have been in academic spaces, is about that part of your lives and works. As multiply marginalized disabled people, what has your experience been in the neoliberal, white dominant academy? The realms of your study, your research, your teaching? What has that looked like for you? And I'll go to Jamila first.
Brutal. Brutal. So, as a multi-marginalized, disabled person, my experience in the neoliberal academy has been white supremacy to the core. You must constantly produce. You must constantly you have to get through so quickly. You have to do this. You have to do this now, all the time. But at the same time, we are completely unwilling to provide you with disability accommodations. Or we'll do the opposite, which is we'll go ahead and allow these professors who don't know anything about neurodivergence, any form of disability, honestly, to make accommodations for you. That's as a student, as a PhD student, as an educator, similar experiences. Honestly, I find myself going. Actually, I feel like I always did, but I realize more and more now that as an educator, I go above and beyond to ensure that students, which I prefer to call adult learners, to be honest, adult learners, are able to have the education that I was never provided. And I will never be provided. I'm just going to be honest, that will never probably happen. It would be wonderful, but I don't imagine that. The neoliberal academy is, built on pushing people out, and if you are not of this or of that, then your experience is not valid. I think one thing that's very interesting about sort of the concept of the neoliberal academy, right, is, one, the white supremacy aspect, but two, they want folks like us for their numbers. But do they want folks like us for real? No. Now let's just be honest about that. And it's not to say that people shouldn't pursue higher education. Please do, by all means. And I love teaching, and I think it's wonderful. It's like honestly, it's highlight of my life is being an educator, to be honest. It's up there with organizing. But I have to say that that's really something that I have gleaned from this experience. While I was in, since I've been in PhD school, or when I was in PhD school, I'm no longer in PhD school, actually. As of June, officially, I guess, or more recently. So that's something, I actually was diagnosed with all of these different varying pieces of disability, if you will, to become multi-disabled while I was in the academy. And it's been an interesting experience to see the fundamental shifts and changes of, like, just treatment, how you are treated once you are labeled as someone who's disabled, who needs accommodations, who this, that, the other. I think as someone who's of color, who's queer, who's non-binary and trans-identifying, not identifying as who I am, all of these different pieces, disabled and multi-disabled at that, it's interesting to kind of see how those things are so important to people, on paper, but then whenever it comes into practice, not so much, right? I think that's also where respectability politics comes in, but also disposability politics. And that right there is the part that gets me the most, I think, especially as someone who's a community organizing educator and a community justice, educator. Those are my two mains. Of course, I also teach in Africana studies and, Arab and Muslim diasporas, but it's the disposability of us as people, even in these spaces where they want us so badly for their numbers, in my mind. And perhaps I'm wrong, but if I am, please, by all means, tell me. But from my experience and watching my comrades' experience in the academy, it's been quite similar. So I think in terms of, research, one of the most interesting things that I've experienced within that is how to really decolonize research, because research is inherently colonialist, and it's something that I've racked my brain around for some time, but it has become even more prevalent in this time. So thanks I'm seeing some nice comments in the chat. Thanks, guys. So I'll leave it there. Kick it over to Bridget or Lydia. I'm not sure. Thank you.
This is Lydia, just acknowledging, what you were sharing, that you're not currently in your PhD program anymore. And I'm so glad that you are out of this awful, terrible space, right? And also expressing so much solidarity and sorrow. That these spaces that offer sometimes the promise of equalizing, right, are also so damaging and traumatizing. Bridget, I'll turn to you.
One thing I forgot to say earlier was a description of myself in my space. So I'm just going to try to do that now because I can't remember all the details. So I am a youngish trans feminine person with particularly pale skin from both sides of the family. I'm wearing a shiny pink dress, and I have a jade pendant, and as well as on top of the jade pendant is a rose quartz necklace I had made by a friend. I have blue lipstick, pink shiny rimmed glasses. My hair is currently dyed red and is in an asymmetrical undercut, and I have a fake flower in my hair. And I am currently sitting in my office, which I moved into less than 2 months ago. So it does not have any fun things up on the wall as of yet. So, little description moment. My experience in the neoliberal academy has been it's been mixed in lots of ways. As a PhD, well, I'm going to start with as an undergraduate student. Starting my undergrad and doing a large chunk of my undergrad was freedom for me. It meant that I was able to escape abuse. It meant I was actually able to define myself and define who I was. I didn't have to hide my queerness from anyone, because despite being queer from the age of 16, I was not able to be out at home for safety reasons. And university was an opportunity for me to blossom. I could pursue my interests in the most ADHD autistic way possible. I was in the field of gender studies in my undergrad, and so I got to learn more about why oppression happens, and I got to explore topics and ways to express these topics in interesting ways. Like, I had teachers who let me write, for an example, really politically provocative porn for class. And writing and doing performance art pieces, doing just alternative assignments. And they were willing to let me do this because this was a department that put a lot of effort and time into understanding that people have needs and were willing to support those needs to the best of their ability. Like, the administrative staff were very, very friendly. They helped me print out assignments sometimes if it was last minute, and they were willing to help with advice and all sorts of important things because I was there and one of their students, and they wanted to see me succeed. And this was something that I experienced. Not all of my classmates did. So this is one of the areas that I experienced some privileges. I actually had a terrible time in disability studies for my master's, where despite doing really well for accommodations and doing really well for creating some disability communities, one of the things they were lacking was this understanding of the things that come up. So the incidental things like, the one example that's on my mind is just printing things out, and how important it is to have access to benefits and employment as access need, because I went into my master's with one of the most prestigious scholarships available in the social sciences, and instead of offering me benefits and employment, they just said, "Oh, you should just concentrate on your studies, and we'll just waive this employment thing off, so you don't have to do any of this." that denied me opportunities to develop more skills and to have access to health benefits, which I didn't realize at that time I would have really needed. And thus, doing my master's took like 5 years to do. And in that time, that was also when I was poor and had to access various forms of support. And I was only able to put my life together, quote unquote, when I was accepted into the PhD program in, once again, gender studies, because it actually meant I had access to benefits. Living on $10,000 a year plus change is not easy. I had to go without so many things that would have been really useful at that time, while doing really hard emotional labor work, doing frontline social services, helping to support queer kids. Okay, so I used to work at the equivalent of the Trevor Project, but in Canada. So lots of difficult conversations with youth. And the PhD has been, once again, very advantageous in many ways. It's been giving me more opportunities to develop the skills that I want to develop. I've been taking every single opportunity I can get my hands on for professional development. It means that people are more likely to want to hire me for gigs and jobs because it's more fancy to have this label of PhD student in front of your name. I can participate as a researcher and try to make changes in academia to try to address some of these terrible things. Not that I expect I'll be doing much, but if I can make little small changes, that is something that would make me happy. And my goal simply is see if I can get employment out of a PhD. And I've been thinking long and hard about it. I probably will end up staying in academia despite all the stress, all the ableism, and all the other isms, because this is a system that I've developed some recognition in versus other job systems where I have a much harder time getting into, despite having extensive qualifications and experiences. Being too autistic to be employable, that has been definitely one of the experiences I've run up against. And we'll see. I'm not hopeful because we are not living in hopeful times, but I will do my best to make the changes I can, wherever I end up.
This is Lydia. I really relate so much to that. And I'm also, for folks who aren't seeing this, Bridget and I have the exact same coffee mug that we're both drinking out of in two different countries. Access is solidarity, is disability, justice is love. And I'm like, oh man, that was not planned. So that folks know that was not remotely coordinated. It was serendipitous. So, I want to ask both of you, moving into the next part of our conversation, how can those institutionally resourced, privileged, powerful spaces, the academy, policy advocacy, the nonprofit industrial complex, LGBTQ wars, how can those spaces actually center disabled, BIPOC voices and leadership? And I'll go back to Jamila.
Ooh, it's a loaded question. Quite loaded. I think that one of the most critical ways to really center you know, all of us as BIPOC, disabled, neurodivergent, you know, people, folks, I guess, quote unquote, on the margins, right? Is to actually accept us for who we are and to understand that we live, as much as everyone wants to discuss intersectionality, are you really intersectional? Are you? That's the real question I have for you, goddammit. Are you really intersectional? Because whenever I look, you know, some of my work is consulting, and whenever I ask people, what is your organization made up of? You know, who are the people in the room? Who are the people at the table? If I don't get a response about race, ability, disability, you know, gender, sexuality, faith, all of these things, then that's always a red flag for me. And it's always quite telling, right? So everyone, I feel like, within like these nonprofit industrial complex spaces and all these other varying spaces, you know, I think that the biggest question I always have is, are you actually doing the work, or do you just see intersectionality as being the focus of like race, gender, and sexuality only? Or does it include, you know, disability and all these other varying pieces within it? I think quite frequently it does not. And whenever organizations work with people that are disabled or do not, right? Because that's more often than not, BIPOC disabled folks are not those that are being worked with. I always wonder why. Mainly, I mean, speaking from a place of just like neurodivergence alone, right? There are these massive companies like Google, and which I'm not shouting out Google, okay? Surveillance, etc. There's a whole lot there. I do research on them. I'm not a fan, but it's not a shout out to them. But Google, Apple, these huge companies, they've recognized the importance of neurodivergence actually being a part of the people that they hire, right? And why is that? Because we're capable of seeing things from a different sort of point of view. We're able to figure out complex problems that neurotypical people cannot. Now with that, the NPIC could very easily adopt such a method, and that could be a way of actually trying to work towards including, in I guess, full inclusion, if you want. I feel weird about the word inclusion even, you know, it's like it shouldn't even be to that point. I feel like it should just be organic. Sorry, this is again a loaded question. So, you know, in terms of making sure to like center disabled BIPOC, you know, voices and pulling folks into leadership, I think that some of the most important things that people need to be able to do in these, you know, beltway organizations, NPIC, etc., is really interrogate their own work and see if they're actually being truly intersectional, or if they're just accommodating to their own needs and what their own desires are. Because if they're not actually including all of us, and they're actually hearing from our voices, from everyone's voices within this community, right? Because it's such a large community. The disability BIPOC community is huge. Unless they're actually listening to us and hearing from our mouths, then what? And I think also with that comes with the understanding and acceptance of sort of what Bridget was talking about earlier, which is that their goal is survival, like beyond survival, right? It's like living a full life. So that also means understanding the limitations that we may have some days. Some days we're going to have executive dysfunction, and it's going to be hard. And you guys got to run with that and be cool with it, because you can't have me at my hyper-focus, problem-solving, complex this if you're not going to have me at my executive dysfunction too. And I think that that's some of the things that come up for me around neurodivergence within these larger spaces. I think also in terms of just the NPIC as a whole, and ensuring that there's, you know, not even space carved out, but just ensuring that we're actually a part of the conversations at the table itself. Just try. Like, honestly, at this point, it's a just try for me. I find more often than not, there's just not even an effort being made to ensure that we're all actually at this table as well, right? Rather, there's a lot of stigma that still exists, and I think that it's interesting, for example, queer and trans movements, LGBTQI movements or organizations in PIC, to be stigmatizing anybody, considering we've historically been stigmatized as queer and trans, people, folks within the umbrella. So I think there's a lot that I could say on this, so I'm going to just stop it and wrap it there. But yeah, thank you very much. So much, actually. So much to say there.
This is Lydia. Thank you for sharing all of that. I have a lot to add, but I don't want to. So I'm going to move to Bridget and just remind folks who are participating, if you have questions, please share your questions in the chat, because in a little bit, we'll be able to take a couple of those.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to one, or actually riff off of something Jamila said for getting into the thing that I wrote down, because I actually got a little bit organized and took a couple notes. So when it comes to corporations like Google hiring autistic people in particular, one of the things I've noticed is that they're looking for a very, very particular kind of autistic. And it follows this stereotype where this is the code junkie, math whiz, autistic stereotype who is invariably a white dude. And this is really damaging because it means, okay, this is also very personal because I tried to use those resources when I was really poor and with a master's degree and feeling completely like a useless sack of flesh because I couldn't get employment. In part because the kinds of jobs that are looking for autistic people in particular are not the kinds of jobs that I have a skill set in. I am a social scientist. I have skills in artistic-based things. I do fiction, I do storytelling, I do performance art, I'm a creatively inspired being. I'm someone who does very well in the social sciences. Like when I took my first social science class in high school, suddenly things made so much more sense because my brain was wired or had an affinity for doing this kind of work. And it's really telling that I am an autistic person who is very, very skilled and yet is not able to get support from autistic employment organizations because they don't understand that maybe I want to work in an organization like theirs. At this disability job search event I went to, they had a panel discussion for people to ask questions. So of course I was the one who asked the question, how many of you are disabled? No one was willing to answer that question because the reality is that they don't see people like us as colleagues, as peers, as people who could be working with them, not and only as service users. And so that's one of my spiel rants, that until the day that until they can see us as colleagues, as peers, and not just people they serve, they will not be able to we will not be able to make the kind of progress we need to make. And speaking of that, I wanted to talk about another side story. I was reading the book Sex Change, Social Change by Vivian Namaste, a white trans woman, unfortunately, in this case, but her book was really influential for me at that time. And this, oh, sorry, Vivian Namaste, I should spell it out and write it in and put it in the chat. Sorry about that. Here is in the chat, Sex Change, Social Change by Vivian, last second name Namaste. Sorry, distraction of chat. And in this book, there was this story about hiring for a trans job, a trans social work type job. And they had all of these really, really qualified trans women who were applying for these jobs who had excellent lived experience, but none of them had something like a master's degree or a master's of social work. And this was an issue because unfortunately they needed the professional credentials to be able to do this one job, and they in the end hired a trans guy for this position who had the qualifications and good lived experience of poverty and things, but this feeling of, once again, this perpetuation of trans men getting jobs over trans women is something that I experienced as a student and as someone trying to get employment. And it's really telling that at the end, despite these trans women having all of these good qualifications, none of them were seen as hireable at the end of the day. And I could just be angry. And so, but I've been trying to think of more constructive ways to address the situation. And the result of this is, I think it's important to actually put work, time, and energy and effort into cultivating relationships, building people up. If you're not seeing the kinds of people you want in those positions, you make them. You invest time and energy into that person you see who's really interested and keen, and over the course of years, maybe not today, but over the course of years, you build them up. This is something that happened to me as a teenager when the queer social workers, all these white queer social workers in Hamilton, they built me up because I was the keen young child who came from a really messed up background, and they were able to help unravel many layers of trauma. They were able to give me opportunities and spaces to learn skills. They showed me how to do things. They invested time and energy and hope in me because they saw this potential for doing something great. And this is something I've been trying to reflect in the work that I do as I move from service user to service provider, or in regards to life stages. I try to support my students as a teaching assistant in developing the skills that they want to do. I think about what skills will they need to get through life, to survive the university, to survive classes. And I've had the luxury of having 2 hours with them a week. And so I devote half of that time to developing various skills that they will need so they can have a better time at succeeding in their life, wherever it takes them, whatever they want to do with their life. And this is something I'd like to see reflected in a lot of these organizations.
This is Lydia. Thank you both for sharing about that weighty, broad topic that we could probably spend a couple of hours talking about that we don't have. I'm just gonna pose 2 more questions to you and then open it up to our community. So let's, knowing that we don't have a whole lot of time, and I am very bad at this in my neurodivergence, like think of this as the speed round. Not like the drug speed, like the maybe give a bit shorter answers to conserve a little bit of time in case folks have some questions for you who are not me. I mean, I know we've got questions. So my second to last question for you all, do you believe that broader social justice movement spaces are able to center our voices and leadership? And if so, how? I'll go to Bridget.
So my immediate answer was witchcraft, but that is not an appropriate answer in this case. Sorry, my sense of humor is shining through a little bit. In all actuality, and just trying to remember exactly what you said, it is possible for them to center our experiences and voices. It just, will they do that? I don't think that this is a value that has been instilled in this neoliberal, late capitalist world that we are living in right now. We don't cultivate empathy. We don't cultivate care. We don't cultivate the ability to think about other people, and when you see a need, addressing it and supporting it when you have the energy. Because until a day where when we are not being led by people who have a severe empathy deficit, which is something that is accused of us as autistic people in particular, we will not have the kind of world that we need to have in order for us to thrive in and be the best people that we can, not despite or in spite of all these things, but because that we are great people who have contributions. We can have this world until people are less terrible. I'm summing it up so I'm not rambling as much. Also, I am writing a paper right now about empathy deficit in neurotypicals.
This is Lydia. Please share that with the entire AWN team. Also, apparently a lot of folks who are here tonight. Jamila, lightning round.
All right. So, this is a great question. So all I've ever done is organized in the broader kind of movement spaces. Interestingly, in prison abolition, I guess PIC as a whole abolition, border abolition, etc., migratory communities. One of the pieces of this that I think is really critical, I mean, also labor, etc. Labor, I've been a labor organizer for many years, just so many cross movement, right? The thing is that I feel as if people, and I'm trying to figure out how to say this exactly how I would like to say it. I do think that people are capable. Now, are they willing? That's the question. I think the question is if they are willing to do so. I think that more often than not, it's sort of what I said before, right? About, you can't have me at my hyper focus problem solving of complex issues and then not having my executive dysfunction, or randomly sometimes I just say, well, all the time, exactly what I'm thinking, no matter what. and that can be a blessing and a curse to other people. For me, though, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the fact that my brain automatically just says, hey, it's honesty time 24/7. But I think that right there is something that people within kind of broader movement spaces are not able to really handle, right? I think that there is plenty of opportunity for people to be more than just accepting of disabled BIPOC folks, and centering us within the work and within leadership. And I think one of the things that's the most interesting about doing the work that I've done for so long, which has been so focused on, like, for example, Campaign to End the Death Penalty was one of the first things I worked on in college, right? Like around prisons specifically, and the prison industrial complex. Same thing with borders, etc. The thing is that disproportionately who is in prison, right? Disproportionately who is in prison? Who the fuck is in prison? People that are disabled, people that also experience substance misuse, which there's a lot of overlap there. I'm actually one of those people that's an overlap. I actually am someone that I prefer to say abstinence. I don't like the words sobriety or sober. No offense to those that do. I just think it's alienating language to kind of silo it in. But more frequently than not, people are unwilling to acknowledge that and then see that people that are directly impacted by those systems are also those that are organizing within them. This is just an example of this work. Now, if people are unwilling to, because I think people are capable of doing this, unwilling to be accepting, unwilling to center certain voices, etc., then, that's on them. But I think that's also where DJ comes in a lot of ways, right? I think that's where a lot of like the work that folks that are doing in this space is so critical. It's so critical to also just ensure that because cross-movement organizing is the only way that we're going to be able to win. Now, making demands within these spaces to actually like acknowledge and, accept and center disabled BIPOC voices and leadership is something that we will have to do in order for any progress to be made. Now, I will say that throughout my career, that is something that I've worked very hard to do, not knowing at the time that I was disabled and those were the things that were going down. But now that I do see these things, it's a little bit different. I think for quick lightning round wrap up, people are more than capable. Are they willing? Not sure. That's why we go in and we demand and we say, we're going to fucking say that you have to do this or there's going to be a problem. I'm not saying we're going to fight you, but we're going to fight you. So, because we're going to make demands that you also are ensuring that everyone is at the table. And if those that are at the margins are not at the table, then what are you doing? What is the point of your movement? Because those that are incarcerated, those that are stuck in the prison system, those that are in the constant rotating of the prison industrial complex are disproportionately those that are disabled, those that with substance misuse, etc. And even in migratory communities, those that end up in immigrant prisons, because again, that's been pretty much my work forever, if you don't go in with some form of a disability, it's pretty likely that you're going to come out with PTSD, CPTSD, fibromyalgia. The list goes on, right? It could be a million different things that goes on. So I think it's critical. I think it's more than critical for people to do this. Now, this is a baseline of this. I think for labor, it's the same thing. But, that's a whole other conversation. We'll just keep it to the PIC abolition and the border abolition. But I think that it's critical for any kind of liberation and for all of our liberation, for us to engage in cross-movement struggle, but also on top of cross-movement struggle, to make demands that we all are at the table. And if people aren't willing to do that, well, then what's the point of even organizing with them in the first place? And I'm not advocating for disposability politics. I'm advocating for y'all need to get your shit together. That's what I'm advocating for. So, thank you.
This is Lydia. No, absolutely, right. And there's a whole other conversation we could have for hours about what real accountability looks like as opposed to disposability, right? But that's a whole other conversation that we don't have time for this evening, but is deeply important to our movement building work. And I just realized we didn't even name your work with the Queer Detainee Empowerment Project, that you've done so much organizing work in that space. If Ellis or Nancy, you could drop that link in the chat for folks to learn more. Our last question, which is similar to the question that Comet Alley also asked in the chat, is what would a world where multiply marginalized people are valued actually look like? What would it mean for disability justice to be present? Again, lightning round. And I'll go back to Bridget.
So, sorry. Imagine a world where a Black autistic wheelchair user who is a trans woman can become a leader, a world leader. Like literally, whatever your equivalent is, President of the United States, Prime Minister of Canada, whatever label you wish to use. Imagine a world where that could actually happen. That is one of the indicators for me. Another thing that we would see is that people would not get murdered, specifically our most marginalized communities. We wouldn't see Black, trans, well, actually, no, not just Black and trans, just in general, BIPOC trans women getting, who are doing sex work, getting murdered. We wouldn't have the issue of disabled children infanticide. We wouldn't have issues of sexual violence against actually everyone, but especially women. It just gets swept under the table and not get addressed in meaningful ways. All these things would be things that we would not see in a world where disabled folks would not be, where disabled folks would be valued. I can't remember if I said the correct grammar here. But I think we would see people actually able to succeed and thrive and be the people that they want to be. I like throwing the word self-determination around, but it really sums it up. What I really mean is people get to live the kind of lives they want to live versus the lives that other people say they should be living.
This is Lydia. Thank you. Jamila?
I would actually like to also echo again everything that Bridget just said, which is all, honestly, everything that is saying is pretty much fire. So thank you so much for that. I feel very similarly. A world where marginalized folks are valued would look like everyone has true access to leadership. They're actually censored. It doesn't matter if you, I think, the Black trans women, that are disabled in wheelchairs or neurodivergent, wherever at on, within neurodivergence, I think one of the most critical pieces of this sort of work and understanding of how we can build a world, or what would a world look like, or how can we imagine what it would be, where marginalized folks are actually valued, is that we all actually are able to live thriving lives, thriving lives where we're not having to spend all of our fucking time explaining ourselves to people, or explaining our disabilities, or explaining who we are, because we just are. And that's okay, and that's great. Actually, it's more than okay, and that's a part of, I think, a broader world actually accepting and loving all people. And I'm not a hippy dippy kind of love person, I have to say that very upfront, but that's something that's really come to me a lot while thinking through Disability Pride Month for the first time, is what could this world look like? And it would look like people actually having the care that they need. Everyone having all that they need, and that there is not a constant struggle for just the basics of survival. I think thriving, I constantly say thriving because I feel like that's something that is always left out of these narratives. Everyone is struggling to survive as someone who's multi-marginalized, especially, Black trans women that are wheelchairs, for example, like Bridget brought up, right? Like, there shouldn't constantly be this demand of just surviving. It should instead be that everyone is thriving. And I think liberation and imagining kind of like queer disabled liberation futures, if you will, would be that. Thinking beyond, not even thinking, but actually creating a world where everyone actually has full access and love and care and all that they need, and that there's no more of just getting by. Because that's what I hear more than anything from everyone, including, myself. And I'm, even though I get, like, I don't like the whole comparison of ability to, disabilities, etc. But for even myself, just the idea of, thriving for all looks all kinds of different ways for different people. But the one consistent narrative that I hear among all disabled folks is just struggling to get by. And there's no reason for that to even be a part of the conversation. Rather, it should just be a world where people are valued and cared for, and everyone is in community trying to build a thriving world for all marginalized folks. BIPOC disabled folks. I'll just be very clear about that. So, thank you.
This is Lydia. Thank you both so much for everything that you've shared tonight. I am so honored and glad to be in community with both of you and to consider you my friends. We are going to share out information and resources from this evening, but before we conclude for the night, I'm going to welcome, to close us out, AWN's founding executive director, Sharon DeVanvoort.
Hi, everyone. This is Sharon. I want to thank Bridget and Jamila so much for all of their, just how wonderful both of you were in sharing the experiences that you've had personally and helping us to come together in community and talk about difficult things that's not always easy to see. And I feel like it's people like you, it's people like our attendees, people like Lydia, who leads, so many different initiatives, and everyone that helps make AWN a better place and a better space. I especially want to thank Andrea from Beyond the Rainbow and Curve Magazine for reaching out and collaborating with us on this. We couldn't have done it without their excellent organizational skills with some of our executive functioning stuff going on over here. So thank you so much. We feel honored to have been able to partner on this, and I'm just so honored. Thank all of you.
This is Lydia. Thank you again, echoing Sharon's words of appreciation and making sure to give a huge shout out to AWN's social media and digital comms team, Kate, Avery, and Kaylee Whalen, and to our webinar programming team, Nancy Yang and Ellis Sardarian, as well as to our language access team present tonight, our team of interpreters, deaf and hearing, and our captioner. We hope you will join us next month in August, at the end of the month on Sunday, for the next installment in the Liberating Webinar series. Have a fantastic night and see you in the struggle.